Okay, friends, we are ready to cast on. We have our sock number. For me, that's 40. For you, that might be a little more or less, but we're ready to cast on. Keeping this handy, we'll need this for other math later. So we're casting on our sock number. We'll be doing a long tail cast on. If you've been following all of my classes, this will not be new to you. I don't know if I showed this on other ones. If I didn't, I'm sorry, I should have. To make sure your tail is always long enough when you cast on, you can wrap your yarn around the needle that you're going to be using, the same number of stitches you're going to cast on. So I already didn't count. So for me, we're going to do 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 40. And then I'm going to put my hand here to keep that spot. And that is where I'm going to put my slip knot. And I will always have a tail that is long enough for my cast on. Little trick there. Made my slip knot. If you need help on how to do a slip knot, I'll post a video here because I have another video showing you how to do that. And there's our first stitch. So now I'm going to cast on 40. Okay, we're going to want to count because we count twice, always. And you see how I have just enough here to weave in later, and it wasn't too much, wasn't too little. Love it. All right, so we're going to get ready to start knitting in the round. I want to have half my stitches on either side of my magic loop. So since I have 40, I'm going to have 20 and 20. You're just going to have half of your number. And that's where I'm going to pull my loop through. It was right in between that 20 and 21st stitch. So for magic loop, we have this long loop. I have half my stitches on one needle, half on the other. I want to make sure that when we're joining here, I haven't twisted any of the stitches, so I'm going to have a nice tube. So how I do that is I turn there's a ridge where we cast on. I'm going to make sure that that ridge is kind of facing inward, where our tube's going to be all the way around, no twisting. And then I can kind of face them down because that's how I'm going to work them. But that is one way that I know I haven't twisted my stitches. So I have my working yarn is on the back needle. It's on the stitch back there. I'm going to bring my stitches on the front needle all the way to the end so I can start working them. I want to make sure that my working yarn is up and over my back needle so that I'm ready to knit the first stitch. I'm going to pull my back needle through, not all the way through. I want to make sure that I have a loop over here. That's about half. My loops are of similar size, so it's going to be less fiddly to work with. And then I'm going to start my knit 1, purl 1 rib. Now this is choose your own adventure. If you want to do a knit 2, purl 2, please do so. We're going to continue with the knit 1, purl 1 ribbing for about 1 inch is what I'm going to do for my socks. Again, choose your own adventure. If you want a couple of inches, do a couple of inches. But that's the main idea here is we're getting started with a nice ribbing pattern for the cuff of our sock. The ribbing pulls the knitting in a little bit so that it's going to be nice and cozy at the top of the sock and not fall down. So I just want to knit enough here so that I can show you what we do when we get to the end of the row here and how to continue around in the magic loop. This will be old news to some of you, but if you're new to magic loop, this will be helpful. We should have an even number of stitches, so we'll end with a purl. I'm going to rotate. My front needle becomes my back needle, and my back needle becomes my front. So I'm going to push that needle through. Oops, I'm about to lose that stitch back there. Push the needle through so that these stitches we haven't knit yet will become the ones we're working on. Pull our working yarn up and over. Pull that back needle through, and I'm going to just start knitting right along. One thing I do want to do is on this first row that I've knitted, not the cast on row, but the first row I've knitted, is add a stitch marker to any one of these stitches. I would recommend doing it on a stitch that you've just knitted. It's easier to count the rows on knit stitches. So I'm going to place one of these markers every 5 rows so that it's easier for me to keep track of how many rows I've knitted. And then also when I'm knitting my second sock, I will just start moving these stitch markers over to the second sock as I knit it so that I'm not having to count every single row or keep track of, oh, so I did 10 rounds for ribbing, for example, and then 30 rounds for the leg. I'm just making those up. That's not necessarily what you're going to be doing, but, and then I have to count every row, make tick marks on paper. I used to do that. This is just a lot easier and simpler. So I'm going to continue. Also, the other thing it does is this tells me this was since I have the stitch marker on this side, this is the beginning of the new round, because it can get confusing also. Is this the second half of the round or the first half of the round? So that way I know it's the first half of the round. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this in 1 inch or so of ribbing, and then we'll be back for the next part. Welcome back. I have finished over here the ribbing cuff of my sock, and I'm ready to start just knitting in the round, knitting every row to make this nice even stockinette portion of my sock. I did just a little bit less than 2 inches here. I thought, so the inch mark was about right there. I didn't think that was quite long enough for what I wanted, so I went a little less than 2 inches. So at this point, I'm going to just start knitting in the round, knitting every row. And then I will stop when I get to however long I want the sock to be. How long do I want my sock to be, Callista? So glad you asked. This is an ankle sock. This is more of a traditional crew length sock, just to give you an idea. This one I knitted for the whole thing about 3.5 inches before I started the heel. This one I did about 5.5 to 6 inches before I started the heel. So that'll give you a good idea there. These are adult women's socks. What you do want to know is that this is a different type of heel. This is the type of heel we're going to be doing. It is going to add about, the heel part is going to add about 3 inches. So you can see where these two kind of sections here marry up. That is where you're going to be at the end of your plain knitting every row. So you're going to have about 3 inches from that point to the bottom of the heel. And this is a sock weight yarn. I have done a lot of socks, sock weight, sport weight, and worsted weight. And with every weight, I always end up with about 3 inches of length added because of the heel. So go ahead and knit your sock until you're about 3 inches short of however long you want it from the bottom of the foot to the top of the cuff. So I am going to be making kind of longer ones more of a crew length. So I'm going to knit about 5.5 to 6 inches, and then we will be ready to start the heel flap of the sock.